Hello, everyone. Welcome back, Swim Smart fans. I'm Carl. I'm the founder, and we've been doing these webinars, kind of hitting up different topics. I think last time we did like butterfly progression sets, so using these different drills to help build great butterfly technique. Today, we're kind of switching it up, talking about writing workouts. So if you're a new coach or you're kind of struggling and how you're writing your workouts for your kids. Maybe this is for you. Maybe this is something you share with your new assistant coaches if you're just onboarding them. And we kind of stole this from our book, the Swim Coaches Starter Guide. So I was thinking back to when I first walked on deck and I was in charge of like a bunch of 9 and 10 year olds. Really had no idea where to start, and so just taking the thought process through my mind, writing it down really helps me organize a lot of information, organize my goals, and hopefully that's what I can share with you today. So I wouldn't take this as like gospel on how to write workouts. I would take it as a way to think about writing workouts, a way to think about coaching, a way to structure your goals. And there's really one big reason for this, because the best workout in the world is the one the kids believe in, right? So it could be 1025s, it could be 10 1000s. If that kid believes in what they're doing, if they believe that it's going to make them faster, it could be the most boring thing you've ever written, but it's going to be the most useful, because the best workout is really the ones that kids put effort into it. If they put in 100% effort, it almost doesn't matter what's on the board. But we're coaches, we like to think things through. So hopefully, if you have a thought process behind how you put the workout together, you can explain it to the kids and the parents and the other coaches, then they're gonna build that trust. You're gonna have trust with them, and they're gonna put in the real effort into the workout. So again, I think you have to know where you're going. What's the old Chinese proverb? Journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. Well, I like to add on to it that if you don't know where you're going, even walking 1,000 miles will get you nowhere. So you really should know where you're going. Every workout, every set should have a goal. And you can even make these goals weekly. They can be for like your big mid-season meet. They could be for the whole season. You could have goals for your club, like over generation. Okay, this group of kids does this, the next group of kids. So you can really expand all of this. And I think in the books and maybe in other presentations, we talk about sitting down with kids one-on-one, talking about their goal setting, and there's different types of goals, different timelines for goals. So this is a whole topic kind of on its own. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but again, if you could just sit down, write down where you're going, it's going to help you write the workouts. It's going to making the workouts obvious, because then you know where you're going. So let's take a scenario here. You have a new 8-year-old. They walk on deck. They're brand new to the club, and they're going to be with you for 10 years. They're going to graduate when they're 18. If you were to make a list of all the skills that 8-year-old should master by the time they're 18, I think you'd come up with something like this. And I know it's a lot of words, and we're not going to, we're not going to read through all of them, but, how are they going to start? How are they going to break out? Obviously, we have 4 different strokes, but it's not just the 4 different strokes. You have different racing strategies, different techniques for different distances, right? The 50 freestyle is different than the 500 freestyle. So you have different strategy, you have different technique, you have the turns, you have different training levels. Again, a whole topic, and I'm sure we'll do a webinar on specifically like older swimmers, different training levels, different training zones, and what they target. So obviously we have a lot to work on here for the next 10 years. If you throw all of this at an 8-year-old, you're not going to have that 8-year-old on your team very, very long, because this is just too much. So we're going to break things down really by age group. And I like to divide it up like this. You don't have to do it like this. It's going to be dependent on how big your club is, how many people you have. But I like Novice is going to be our 8 and unders. And, before this, you could have a whole swim lesson program, which is, again, different topic. But for our purposes, we're going to do Novice, 8 and under. Then you have this kind of middle range group, 9 to 12, so late elementary, middle schoolish. and then senior group is your high schoolers. So as the kids get older, their bodies are developing, they're changing. The races that they can do are changing. The events they are doing that change. So their workouts should change to accommodate for all that, right? And when you're writing workouts, we want to think about what skill am I trying to train, and what race am I training for. And hopefully, as we go through each of these groups and what their training looks like, how to write workouts, hopefully these things start to show up in the workout. So I'm kind of giving you a foreshadowing on like, what am I trying to do when I'm writing a workout? I'm trying to work out for a race. I'm not working out for workout's sake. And usually the group has a weakness, especially if you're at a swim meet. Let's say you're watching your kids swim. None of them get to the flags off the walls, right? So that's a weakness that you've identified. They don't have good underwaters. So the next week, the next month, every workout you write, it's gonna incorporate that weakness and try to train it and make a strength. Every wall, we're going to do 3 dolphin kicks. These dolphin kick sets are going to do this, do that. So as long as you have a goal, again, remember, we're trying to get to a destination. So as long as you have a goal, I think you're going to be more successful. I like to use structured templates. That helps me organize the whole week or every 2 weeks of practices. That way I'm not doing too much of one thing and forgetting to do something else. These templates, again, they change based on the age. So I have different templates that I use for novice, age group, and senior. And like we said, the training should reflect what you're training for. So different goals, different ages, different races. Great. Once you put all those things together, you can build a scaffolding of what needs to be done, and it makes writing the workout easy. Like it just, once you have the question down, it's easy to give an answer. But my goal is to give you the question. Okay, let's start with the novice group. So these are 8 and unders. Instead of going off that big master list that we had here, okay, what are the most important things for an 8-year-old to pick out of this? This is my list. So diving, and usually I do it from the side of the pool, not from the blocks. I mean, that's maybe something you can work on in one-on-one lessons. Technique. Everything is technique based. Kicking is even going to be technique based. I rarely do like kicking with a kickboard, right? Because that doesn't actually teach them. It doesn't teach them anything, right? We don't race kicking on a kickboard. And I have such limited time with these kids. For instance, well, we'll get to the rest later. You have such limited time. Usually these kids are coming in, 3, maybe 4 times a week, and that's if they show up every day. Most of my kids don't do it. I doubt, maybe yours do. You're luckier. We just cannot teach them everything all the time. So some of the things that you may notice are not on here. Turns are not on here. I can't tell you how much time I've spent trying to teach an 8-year-old how to do a flip turn or a good open, or let's say a flip turn. It is just not worth the effort. I mean, you have many more important things to worry about, and turns they can learn when they're older. 9, 10-year-old when practices are longer, when they're more frequent, when they're racing more often. Then we can start incorporating those more complicated things. But when kids are young, they're not that coordinated. This is going to be a huge time drain. Maybe cut it out. That's me. You don't have to follow, but to me, that's what I'm just trying to show you what's important to me, what I'm going to focus on. Again, what the other thing to notice is that there's no sprinting or endurance. There's no training zones, right? These kids are basically, you can't train them enough for that purpose. They're still growing. It's really not a big deal at this point. Technique is everything. If we can ingrain their technique, that's the most important thing. So this is the template that I kind of use, and it's really just splits up the strokes and what kind of kicking, and even the kicking is really not, like I said, not done with a board, but it's like a kicking heavy drill. I'll show you an example of that. But this helps me organize things so that I'm not forgetting something, and then I can write a workout that's specifically for butterfly, and then I work out a workout specifically for breaststroke, and that helps me organize, helps me write the sets easier. So what does a novice workout look like? like I said, these kids are coming in 3 to 4 times a week, 45 minutes, maybe 60 minutes in the water. It's a glorified swim lesson. We're trying to have fun. We're trying to learn the strokes. We're trying to learn the important things of the strokes, and we have these progression. Videos, and we did butterfly last time. We'll do another one next time to tell you how to use drills to train these strokes. I pretty much 100% drill based, very kick heavy, even when we're racing, even when I'm getting them to sprint, even when we're up doing relays for fun, they still have to do the drill because the drills help teach them how to do the stroke better. So here's an example. This is a freestyle set. We're going to do 625, 6 and roll, and I would teach beforehand or early in the season. 6 and roll is all about like head position, right? It's got a specific focus. That drill is meant to teach you one thing. Triangle drill. Then we're going to do 625s, build it up into triangle drill. So they hold their arm up. We want a high elbow. So one goal. We want the elbow to be high. CU is short for catch up, so we want them to be long. They want their hands to touch every stroke. And then sprinting, side-by-side sprints. Kids love to race each other. So if you put them, in a lane side-by-side, sprinting catch up. So now you're literally teaching them to sprint with a long stroke, which is good early on. Maybe that's not how we want them to race when they're 18, but it's easier to go from a long stroke to a short stroke rather than a short stroke to a long stroke. So we want to teach them, we kind of want to over-exaggerate, over-teach them that way early, and then we can modify it later. Okay, couple notes about this set. There's no time, right? There's no clock. We're not doing it on 30 seconds. We're not doing it on a minute. I don't want them to focus on anything other than doing the drill properly, and then I'm going to send them off every time they kind of gather at the wall. Okay, kids, ready, set, go. 6 and roll. Remember, focus, head down, arm out, head down, arm out, head down, arm. I just repeat. Think about it like programming, right? You're trying to mold this piece of clay, and the only way you can mold it is by yelling at them. Well, not yelling, but using these drills and by talking to them constantly, trying to, build these neural connections in their young brains. So this is how I think about it, and I want their brains to focus on the drill, not on something that really is kind of maybe a little bit above their capacity at the time. So there's no time. We take our time. If we have to do this set every week, every month, you don't have to be fancy. You don't have to change this up and make it interesting for them. They'll probably won't remember in a couple days that you even did this progression set. You just do it every couple weeks, and it'll start building into them. So what does a kick set look like? Like I keep saying that I don't really use kickboards for the sets because I want them to drill the kick into their stroke. So you would do 100, let's say we have fins on, left, right triangle. So 25, they're going to actually just hold the triangle and they breathe to the side and they come back with their head down, breathe to the side, but they're not using their arms, right? So all of this is their legs doing the work. But at the same time, we're teaching them to have a high elbow. We're teaching them to breathe low in the water. We're teaching them to return to that streamlined position. So even in our kick set, we are teaching them how to swim properly. So you do a few rounds, 100, hold left, hold right, hold left, hold right, and then you do 225s like regular freestyle, but really focusing on driving with the legs. We call it overkick freestyle. So they're kicking, and their arms are almost slow motion. That's how I build a kick set instead of just giving them a board and saying go back and forth. We do it sometimes for sure, especially when I want to teach them like, hey, like your legs can burn and they're not going to fall off. It's going to be okay. So it's not purely like this, but that's kind of how I like to do it during the year. Okay, tapering for novice kids. This is it. This is what you do for taper and novice kid. There's nothing to do. These kids are so young. They're so small. They basically recover 100% after every workout. So there's no point to doing a taper before meet. Maybe you play some more games. Maybe you focus a little bit more on dives. Maybe you do more sprinting. If I'd do anything, I'd do even more sprinting towards a big swim meet rather than all those drills. But again, this would not be even something that you write down. All right. Hopefully this is making sense. Hopefully it's giving you some ideas. As we move up in ages, things get a little bit more complicated. So these are our 9 to 12 year olds. And I get that some 9 year olds are not going to be up to this level. Some 12 year olds are going to be way beyond this level. This is just general guideline again. So let's start with our goal. Where do we want to take these guys with our training? We're going to dive off the blocks. We're going to do relay starts now. And the big change for them is that we have sprinting and endurance. So for each stroke, for each kicking style, we're going to have a sprint version and an endurance version. And we're going to build that into our template. So we have sprint freestyle sets, we have endurance backstroke sets. And so we've had sprint. So now we've added sprint and endurance to our workout, which is different than the novice. Remember, we kind of ignored that for novice. We're going to work on IM stuff, so we've included that. And then now we're going to start working on flip turns. So if we're going to build a template, put all these different features into like a 2-week rotating program, this is kind of what I come up with. Obviously, you don't have to follow it, but this is just what I like to do. I think, number one, I'd say the kids actually like to see themselves improve. And for them to see themselves improve, I give them a test set or a progression set, something that every 2 weeks they know the system is the same. 1050s on a minute this week. Next time it's going to be 1050s on 55. Then it's going to be 1050s on 50. I do a little bit different than that, but that's just a brief example. I like to do one for kicking, one for swimming. And then throughout the rest of the week, you can kind of see how this is split up. We have a endurance, IM endurance set. We have a kick sprinting set. We have sometimes, just to save time, I'll combine the long axis strokes, backstroke freestyle, and the short axis strokes, butterfly breaststroke. And so I build sets that work on hip action or rotation, which apply to both types of strokes, just to kind of save some time. Another big thing I would point out is that I dedicate time at least every other week to starts and turns. So we're gonna we're not gonna be doing a training. We're gonna treat it as its own thing, and instead of leaving it till the end of the season to work on, we try to hit it up, once every other week or so, so that the kids actually get practice with that. And there's drills, there's teaching, there's video, all of that stuff that we throw in there. So for these kids, they're working out a little bit more, 5 to 6 times a week. The time is more, so you have an hour and a half. I would say this is average for most people. We're going to do technique 90% of the time. So if we went back to that, to this template, really only these progression drills have like no technique, no drill, nothing associated with them. It is simply make that time. So it is like a real test set where they try to, improve themselves every time. Everything else, even the sprinting stuff, there's technique in there, there's drills, especially the endurance is pretty much based all on drills. Another thing that we're going to add, these kids are starting to get older, they can watch the clock, they should be responsible for running the set. A lot of times I see young coaches spend most of their time on deck almost like babysitting, like telling the kids, all right, we're leaving on the top, we're leaving on the 15. That really, at this point, this should not be your primary job. Your primary job should be to give technique feedback, to cheer them on, to give instruction. It should not be telling them when to go on the clock. I know obviously there's a rough patch where they have to learn that, but within a couple weeks they should be able to run the clock. They should be able to know when to go, what they're trying to do on every round. And when you're writing these sets, in some way they should be as tough as possible. These kids they're still real small. They still recover really well after every workout. Excuse me. So you want every workout to be as mentally challenging as they can on the interval, or as challenging on a technique, for instance. And I'm losing my voice. We're not going to make it. And these kids bounce back, right? and they love working hard if you can really teach it to them well. So let's go through a couple examples here. So here's like an endurance freestyle set. So obviously the yards are pretty high, at least for this age group. And here I've split it up. This age group has such a huge variation. You have kids that can barely make it across the pool. You have kids that are racing in the 500 all in the same group. So how do you break it up by workout? You can break it up by distance or by time. So here one lane is going to do 2 150s, another lane is going to do 2 100s, a third lane is going to do 2 75s. And with a little practice, the kids kind of know where to break themselves up. So here we're going to do a drill set first. So they're going to do, they have their time. This is on 3 minutes. 6 and roll, triangle, catch up by 50. So every 50, especially for the 150 group, they're going to do a 50 6 and roll, 50 triangle drill, 50 catch up. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm building up their freestyle. We're focused on head position, high elbow, long swimming. Great. So I've set their technique in stone here, or at least that's what I think I'm doing. That's what I'm telling them that they're doing. Whether that actually happens, I don't know. And then we go into a series of hundreds that get faster and faster on the interval. And they're trying to hold that same technique as they get faster. As they get more tired, I want them to hold that same technique. And, I give them a stroke count to do. So with more time, they have to take less strokes. With faster time, they take more strokes. Maybe this is a little more complicated than it needs to be. This could be at the end of the season where kids are really functional and they know what all these terms mean. They know what all the times mean. But, when I would explain it to these kids, that's what I have a goal to explain them. In the first set, we're setting our technique down, and in the 3 lines, we're getting faster and faster, but we want to hold the technique and hold our stroke count. Backstroke, kind of the same thing. If it was going to be a big endurance set, we're gonna do drills on every 25. Streamline kick, 6 and roll, L drill, 16 stroke. You may not know what these drills are. That's not important. Well, all I'm showing you is that I'm not going to just send them and say, hey, 8 100s backstroke on this time, go. No, I want there to be another level of depth. I want them to be thinking about what they're doing, mentally engaged all the time, especially during endurance sets. Sprint sets, maybe we lay off that half the time, but endurance sets, their brain should be active the whole time and thinking about what they're doing. So as long as you get to that point, you're doing a great job. You're going to be a great coach. Okay, taper for these groups, very minimal. Maybe a couple days of lower volume. Never decrease the intensity. We want to keep the intensity and the racing up. If anything, you go up on it. Again, these kids recover really fast. Like you could make them swim a lot, and by the next morning, they're going to be ready to go again. I wouldn't do it for more than a week or just a couple days. And, maybe if you want to start working a little more on dives, turns, getting them to feel the water a little better, sure, these are all optional. Again, though, don't go overboard on taper. We're not doing some 6-week monster thing. They don't need it. Spend your time focusing on important things like this. Okay, we're moving on. This is the senior group. Pre-senior, maybe you have another group in the middle that's kind of a mix of age group and senior. That's okay. It depends how you're going to break it up in your club. So things get even more complicated. So now, let me start kind of from the back. We're going to split endurance into 2 separate sections. Where do I have it written down here? Aerobic endurance and aerobic power. I'll show you what this looks like in a flow chart. And then sprinting, we're going to split into 2 separate categories. So lactate training and then sprint or speed training. And then you have to do that for each stroke. That becomes a little overpowering. So for these kids, I usually try to focus them a little bit. They have a primary stroke, usually freestyle, and a secondary stroke. So their butterfly, their breaststroke, their backstroke, whatever that's going to be. That doesn't mean we're not going to do the other strokes. We're still going to do IM stuff, but it's kind of narrowing down just a tiny bit, so that way we're not spending too much time spreading ourselves too thin. Okay, What else? So dolphin kicking becomes a big deal, sprint kicking, and then strategy. If I had to add in one thing for this group is that we're going to add in race strategy. Age groupers, no matter what race, they should be going all out all the time. Doesn't matter if it's the 50 or the 500. We don't want them to think of swimming slowly ever. It's easier to slow them down later than to speed them up. So when they get older and older, now we're going to start incorporating, okay, well, how are we going to pace the 200? How are we going to pace the 1,000? Even the 100? Like, how are we going to race that? Are we going to do 3 dolphin kicks, 4 dolphin kicks off every wall? Are we going to breathe like this or like that? So for each kid, this starts changing a little bit, but this is when I would start incorporating it and not any sooner. So that's a big soapbox takeaway. So here's kind of a diagram, and I talk about why we do this, why we break up into 4 different training zones. In different talks, we'll get to that maybe someday, but I would explain to the kids, what each training zone works on biologically. So like aerobic endurance works on your mitochondria. Lactate tolerance works on your buffering capacity. We're not going to go through the details here, but just in your mind, this is how I like to split it up. And so when I go to, I skipped my template. I should put that first. So this is like the template. So you have, freestyle or your primary stroke, and then you have a secondary stroke, and I have sets that I build off of that. And then in each of those, you have your speed. So is it an aerobic endurance? Is it a sprint set? Is it an aerobic power? Again, I'm not going to go through the details of what those really look like in the nitty gritty. This is just how I like to approach it. So I list out my goals, I list out my training zones, and then I build a template that kind of makes sense to me. Like if you notice in this template, maybe we'll break it down a little bit. Every third day is a IM and a kick day, and in my head that's kind of like my recovery set, right? These kids are kind of big, they're getting stronger, they need some time to recover, so I'm going to build it into the template. So on these IM days and kicking days, we go a little bit slower, we focus on some different things, and it gives them a little bit of kind of a partial rest. On the other days, the first set of the day is pretty much the high speed event. I put that up front. So the sprinting, the lactate, the aerobic power is like 200 pace type stuff. And then the second set of the day is usually a lot slower speed. So this is your more endurance stuff. We put on paddles, we put on fins, and we start swimming for a little bit longer period of time. And so this is how I built this template. I think I go through it more in the books and in other courses. I won't beat it down too much. So the workouts, obviously these kids are spending quite a bit of time with us. So 6-10 workouts a week, hour and a half, 2 hours each workout. So we have a lot of time to work on these things, which is nice. But at the same time, again, we have to build in those recovery days because this could really overtrain them pretty fast. I start to get away from drills at this point. Whatever technique, unless they're totally brand new to swimming and they're just joining as a 13-year-old, if they've been part of swimming since they were 9, 10 years old, their technique is not going to be so malleable. It's going to be more set in stone. And using drills to try to adjust that, it has its place, it has its time, but I don't think that's my biggest bang for my buck. Instead, I'd like to be goal oriented. So what I mean by that is they're trying to make a time, or they're trying to make a race strategy, or they're trying to maybe just simply hit a stroke count, or they're trying to measure their heart rate. So instead of doing specific drills, I want them to train with a specific goal in mind. And if I had to break down what those goals look like, it's really these two things. Like, what race am I training for? So that set should feel like that race. So if you're training for the 200 freestyle, that set should feel like a 200 freestyle. It should look like a 200 freestyle. Obviously, you're going to break it up to make it to get more out of it. And then the other goal is like, okay, what weakness am I focusing on? I know I talked about this a little bit earlier. Usually, the whole group has some sort of weakness. they don't kick enough during their 200. They don't, their tempo is too long or it's too short. And so we're going to build sets to try to train those things, and the kids are going to be thinking about that as they're doing the sets. Training equipment, again, this is more for endurance type stuff. We're going to schedule recovery days. All right, we talked about all that. So let's take a look at some sets and see if we can't break it down and see what this actually looks like in real life. So here we're going to go 3 rounds, so that means we're going to do this three times over and over and over. 3 100s, and we have different times for different levels of swimmers. 3 100s on a pretty tight interval, just make it. So JMI means just make it. So they're not doing a drill. They're not holding a stroke count. Maybe for individuals you could set that up. I just want them to make the time, and this should be like, they should only get 5 to 10 seconds of rest for this. So they're going pretty hard. They're going to get a little bit tired, and then I'm going to give them a little bit of a break. But in the break, I'm going to make them focus on something that they're weak. So let's say that this whole set is getting them to use their arms, get longer strokes out of their arms. So we're going to do 450s, right arm on the way down, left arm on the way back. And so it really forces them to, instead of just chopping at the water, fully extend, fully rotate, use one arm pull all the way through. Even when you're tired, I still want them to have a long stroke. And then we go back to swimming fast again. So 4 100s, a little bit slower interval, but longer distance, and they're descending. So each 100 they get faster and faster and faster. And then again, they're getting tired. I take a break. We do 450s of a drill, trying to get their arms to be long again, because usually when you're tired, that's when your stroke breaks down. So right when their stroke is breaking down, I focus them on getting it back to a long, nice looking stroke. And then last one is 6 100s build. So every 25 they get faster. So the whole, and again, if you don't use these drills or you use different terms for these drills, that's totally fine. This is just what I have written down as an example. And again, so you can see that this set is alternating between tire them out, refocus their good technique, tire them out, refocus their good technique, tire them out, refocus their good technique. And hopefully we can build that good technique so that even when they're tired, they still look good swimming. Okay, let's take a look here. So this is more of a like a 200 pace set. So everything they do here is for a best average. So they're trying to go as fast as they can, maybe holding their 200 pace. So 450s on a minute, and then 225s on 30. Right, so they get to hit it hard for 450s. They're starting to get tired. They're probably starting to slow down. And then I shorten up the time, or shorten up the distance. Even though the time is the same, like per 25, you're still getting the same amount of rest. But in their mind, like mentally, it changes something. Oh, I just have to go at 25. It's much easier, so they bring back that speed. So what this set is teaching is that the last 50 or the last 25 of your 200, we're actually going to go faster. We're going to accelerate and build into that last 25% of the race instead of slowing down. So I get them tired, and then I speed them up at the end. And then we do 3 more rounds with fins, but this time we're increasing the distance. So again, get them tired and then finish with a sprint. And then fins and paddles if you want, but these are 2 100s. So you're going pretty fast for quite a bit of time here. And again, once they break down and start getting slow again, we speed them up with the 25. So it's kind of a mental game that I'm playing with them. Get tired, speed up. Get tired, speed up. Great. And then this set, we won't kind of talk through it, but this is focusing on dolphin kicks and getting them to kick out further and further and further. So, if you want to pause the video and take a look through there, that's kind of how we do it, incorporating it into the actual swimming. Okay, so we're thinking about all these things. How do we put this together? This is very complicated. So this is my strategy. First, I have my template, and next I write for each, I would pretend each box is one set. Okay, what's the goal of that set? So freestyle, aerobic power, so that's like your 200 speed. So I'm going to write a set that's focused on 200 strategy. So maybe it's going to be 450s on a minute, and each 50 is going to be faster than the last one. So you're training them to build the 200, right? These kids are big enough that we don't want them to go all out on the first 50. We want them to go out at a reasonable pace, and then they pick up the intensity, and hopefully that maintains their time throughout, whatever. So for every set here, where's my mouse? So for every set, I'm going to write like a one word or a one sentence focus. Like, what am I trying to do with each set? Finish with distance per stroke. 400 IM simulator. We're going to practice the 100 strategy. Distance, again, it doesn't matter what you write here, as long as you write something and then it forces your workout to target that and to be goal oriented. So we're not just writing a workout for workout's sake. We're not just writing a workout just to be fancy, just to keep the kids entertained. The workout should do something, right? The kids should get done with a workout and it should feel like, okay, I made that race better. I made that 200 better. I made that 100 better. And then after I've written in a goal for each set, then I fill in the actual sets. And I do it at a 2 weeks at a time. This takes a while, maybe a few hours to really think things through. And we won't go through all of this, but hopefully in the back of my mind, like these workouts kind of fit together like a Tetris puzzle. And one of them works on something like kicking specific, another one works on rotation. So I kind of have a variety of goals throughout the 2 weeks, and then that kind of repeats, and I change based on what I think the biggest weakness of the group is. So hopefully that made a little bit of sense. Hopefully that opens your mind to some ways of thinking about writing workouts, about being goal oriented. You can choose the goals that you want. You can build the template you want. But hopefully I'm just trying to challenge you to do that. So taper for these big guys kind of it can be really variable. Obviously it's going to be a little longer, 1 to 2 weeks, especially depending on what you're tapering for. This is so hard. It depends on swimmer, it depends on their gender, what events they're going to do, whether this is a big meet or just an in-season meet. If I had to give some really brief guidelines, cut the volume, not the intensity. Gradually come down towards like a meet warm-up the day before. Don't take a day off before the meet. I have a whole talk on the taper and taper blues and what that is, what causes that, so we won't dive into it. I don't want to let this go too much overboard, but hopefully those are some guidelines that you guys picked up, and hopefully you liked it. If you did, we've got more education stuff on our website, swimsmarttoday.com. I'll actually show you where you can find that stuff here in just a second. But if you ever have questions or you just want to bounce off ideas, sales@swimsmarttoday.com. That's my email. It comes directly to me. I always like to get questions from people. We have a whole bookstore. Remember, since you took time out of your day to listen to me rant and complain on the internet. We have webinar 20 is a code that you can use to get 20% off. And I'll show you here where to find some of this stuff. So where's my website? So if you come to swimsmarttoday.com, there's a couple free things that I wanted to show you. If you go to Bookstore, free downloads. So we actually have these workout templates that we use. Actually, you could download them and use them yourself. So, and I think I have workout examples in there. I think I have it divided by those age groups. So there's one for novice, for age group, for senior swimmers. It tells you what to do, why we do it. It kind of gives a big explanation, totally for free. And then if you need actual help with workouts, we have these workout progression tab, and you just click on these and add to cart, and then once you check out, you'll get a download link. So workout progressions, it's nice for kids to actually see their growth over the season. And if all they see is a little bit of a time drop at the end, it's kind of tough to get them to realize that they're improving. They're actually improving throughout the season. So this workout progression divides different strokes, different training zones, and then it gives a level 1, level 2, level 3 for each workout. So you can kind of start on level 1, and then maybe a month later you try the level 2, and a month later you try level 3, and you can actually tie it back. You can show the kids like, hey, look, a month ago you did it like this. Now you're doing more yards, tighter interval, all this different stuff. If you have a progression set, I have those all listed out. So there's like 300 different workouts in there, including kicking, freestyle kicking, dolphin kicking, all of that. So, and then we didn't get to it today, but there's a whole season plan in here that also explains how you vary each set throughout the season, how much of each set you're going to do. And we'll do a webinar on that later to kind of dive into that a little bit more deeply, but didn't want to overload you in one time. So these are all free, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff here. If you wanted to actually like dive in more into these topics, there's courses. So just like this, me talking into a microphone, showing you the PowerPoint, identifying all these different things, videos. So there's the coaches clinic or the swim coaches starter guide, which you can find under the courses tab, or if you prefer it in a book, we have the book, and it goes through all of these different templates and workouts and way more topics in much more detail. So we have kind of different resources for different people. Just depends on how you like to consume it. So again, guys, thanks for joining us. Hopefully these become more popular. Like, share, follow, get notified, and we'll keep you updated. Thanks for joining.